Hi and welcome to the video. I'm Dave and this is Game Over, and today we're jumping into Battlefield 1 once again. It's been a really long time since any Battlefield 1 content has featured on my channel, so here we are jumping back into the fun of World War 1. That doesn't sound okay, does it? And today's video is a bit of a look to the future for the new Battlefield title. Since the recent announcements of Star Wars Battlefront 2 and Battlefield 5 not receiving any new content from now on, Battlefront 2 apparently being finished and Battlefield 5 being abandoned, DICE are jumping ship, and I'm making the assumption, and I think a lot of people are, that all of their efforts are going to go into making the newest Battlefield title, which is due to be released next year. So I thought it was a good idea to have a look at what actually did work in Battlefield 1 and what could be carried through to the newest Battlefield title that would actually make the game a success. So what was it about Battlefield 1 that made it such an enjoyable experience? Well, I can tell you off the bat that it definitely wasn't the menus. It's a real struggle to connect to your friends and then get into a game. I mean, we spent about 45 minutes actually trying to get into a lobby together. So that part of it, absolutely no. DICE has a bit of a problem with making sure menus are manageable and that they actually function in the way that it's intended. Hopefully that's something that gets addressed for the newest title. I thought that was going to happen in Battlefield 5, but as we all know, nothing went right for Battlefield 5. But once you actually get into a game, all of those issues are forgotten very quickly. It's a very exciting and very immersive experience, and this is aided by lots of things. It's mostly, I think, down to the sound design, which I'll come back to later. The map design plays a huge part in making sure all of the gunfights and excitement stays at a high level, and also the visual design. And what I mean about visual design is color grading, is about lighting effects, but most importantly, because it is a first-person shooter, is about visibility, which is obviously a continuing and from now on a never-changing issue in Battlefield 5. I touched on this very briefly in my most recent Battlefield 5 video. I'd gone back to it after not playing for 10 months to check out what was different, so if you want to know my thoughts on that, make sure you check out that video. But basically, I think the 3D spotting in Battlefield 1 was an excellent way to combat people being able to sit down, hide in a bush, and be rewarded for it. Yes, you can get away with it in Battlefield 1. You can sit with a sniper near the back of the map and not get picked off by people simply because they can't see you. But this mechanic is made far more difficult by the manual 3D spotting that every player on the map is able to do. Now, I've used the Scout class as an example there because it's the easiest class to get away with this style of play with, but in Battlefield 5, every single class could play like this. And it causes the gameplay loop to go at such a slow pace, it just simply is not exciting. This isn't the case in Battlefield 1. You're constantly shifting position because you're discovering new enemies that are trying to flank, you're moving to intercept them, or you're wheeling around to try and get a better angle to take them out so they don't end up wiping out the rest of your team. Now, this is just one particular aspect that I think makes Battlefield 1 work really well. Visibility is at the top of my list. Map design is another thing that I think is very, very important. And this was done on the whole very well in Battlefield 1. Some of the maps do sort of suck, I'll get into that in a minute, but one very good example of a very good map design is on Amiens. There are two hotly contested zones on Conquest, C and D, that are in the middle on bridges. They're always going to be very difficult to take and are always going to be fought heavily over. But that's not to say that there aren't flanking routes. You don't have to sit there and try and pick off enemies and then push in. You can go around the sides and make those big battlefield moments that they go on so much about on their social media by taking a riskier but more rewarding route around the side of your enemy. And one example of a bad map design in Battlefield 1 is Suez. Now, it can be exciting on domination and on smaller game types like Team Deathmatch as well, simply because there are so many buildings, different pathways and stuff like that, different sight lines you can make. But on Conquest, it is just too linear. You stack up against the other team and try and pick each other off. And thanks to it being so narrow, it's very difficult to pull off those flanking maneuvers I talked about before. And now onto the sound design. Now, I think they've done a very good job on Battlefield 1 of making sure you can hear enemy footsteps so you don't get snuck up on all the time, something in Battlefield 5 that has been a massive struggle constantly. But mostly the sound design has been used to make those heart-racing moments even more intense. So as you can see in this clip, I've got Get Good Guy in front of me. We're running along the side of this building and a tank has called in an artillery strike on themselves. You can hear every single explosion. We're standing 10-15 meters away from certain death. We're running along. You can hear the footsteps hitting the planks on the floor. You can hear the soldiers breathing. You can hear everyone shouting. You can hear gunshots going off in the background. Having such clear and well-balanced sound design forces you to keep track of those audio cues that are going to help you in that very moment. But in the back of your mind, you're always thinking that something else is going to change and you're listening out for that as well. It creates that level of nervousness and fear that simply wouldn't be there if the sound design wasn't up to scratch. I want to touch briefly on gunplay and how it's different in Battlefield 1. The random bullet deviation makes a huge difference to the weapon balance in this game. The scout class is made far more potent because of it, because they're not always going to get picked off from distance by someone using a semi-auto rifle. The highly skilled players will get rewarded for being more accurate and for fast target acquisition. The random bullet deviation levels the playing field here, so it's more about how you use your weapons, the ranges that you decide to engage in, rather than just spamming the trigger and getting away with it. Now, the gunplay in Battlefield 5 is pretty decent. Your bullets go where you're pointing your gun when you're pointing it there, which makes absolute sense. But after jumping back into Battlefield 1, I can now appreciate more why people think that the skill gap in Battlefield 5 is much smaller than Battlefield 1. And I think the main reason is the style of gunplay. Now, I'm not sure exactly how to approach this for the new Battlefield game. I'm not sure if they could go back to the random bullet deviation on all weapons or some weapons. I'm not sure if that would really work for the balance, but it's something that definitely needs to be tested out extremely thoroughly, because after all, the gunplay is one of the most integral parts of the game. Now, that's all the nitty-gritty, all the boring stuff that's to do with Battlefield 1. I want to talk about all of those fun moments, all of those moments that make you laugh, people trying to do things that they shouldn't really be getting away with, but still managing it, like this guy with his Jeep. He's driving this car around trying to run people over and circles back around for a second pass when he's not successful. Now, it's this kind of stuff that makes you really laugh out loud while you're playing, and even watching this clip back, I think it's so ridiculous. Or this guy that's bouncing around on this motorbike with his friend trying to shoot people as they're driving past. These possibly moments of idiocy, or it could be genius if you manage to pull it off, are some of the most fun things that you can find in Battlefield 1, as well as the huge cinematic moments you get, like for instance here, when this behemoth is gonna fall on top of my head, and while I was running away from the danger zone, I was yelling, "It's gonna land on me, it's gonna land on me, oh god, oh god, oh god." Now, this is something you simply don't experience in Battlefield 5. That level of excitement and fear and laughing while you're playing, I don't think I've ever actually had in Battlefield 5. And I think it's because BF5 was just such hard work. I'm straining my eyes all the time to see people. I'm trying to predict movements on maps that don't particularly make sense, but most of the time I'm just running in an open field. Battlefield 1 doesn't do that. Battlefield 1 engages you. It excites you. It forces you to adopt many different styles of play. It makes you take risks within your gameplay. It makes you work as a team. It makes you want to get better. But most importantly, it's just a fun experience. Now, if you haven't jumped onto a previous Battlefield title recently, I'd suggest you do it. Jump into Battlefield 1, jump into Battlefield 4, find out what was fun about those things, and if you think it would make a difference to DICE at all, make sure you let them know. Make the community as a whole push forward what we think we would like to have in the new Battlefield game. After the abysmal failure that Battlefield 5 was, I've got my fingers crossed that DICE are going to listen to the community. They're going to take on board what people are saying. And it has been proven that we do have the power, if you remember the TTK changes that got reverted back. Now, after just having some fun for a couple of hours yesterday on Battlefield 1, I'm reminded that DICE are capable of making a very, very good game. I'm very hopeful for the future, for the new Battlefield title. I'm hoping all of DICE's attention going on to the game is going to make a huge difference to the quality of the product that they do eventually put out. And they also have a ridiculously long list of mistakes to avoid, but with a game like BF1 setting an example for what a Battlefield game could be, I think we're in pretty good stead. But that's just what I think. I want you guys to let me know what you think about the previous Battlefield titles, about Battlefield 5, and what you hope will be in the new Battlefield game. I just want to say this video was way longer than I thought it was going to be. I thought it was going to be like 5 minutes. But anyway, I have recently started up my Patreon page again, so if you guys want to help support the channel, help me get content out more often, then make sure you go into the description and hit the link for the Patreon page. Now, over 94% of my views come from people that aren't subscribed, so if you come across the channel and you like what you see, I'd really appreciate it if you hit the sub button. Don't forget to leave a like as well, that would be fantastic, and until next time, that's Game Over. Peace.